Hello, I'm Elly Dowding.
And I'm Lee Coates, and we are ESG Accord and the Accord Initiative.
You're listening to Accord Talks, a podcast about sustainability, compliance and advice processes supporting the financial advice sector. Welcome to our first podcast. We hope you're all well. Okay, so this is our very first episode. To kick things off, we're going to do some introductions and we're going to talk about what you can expect from these podcasts. And after that, because it was London Climate Action Week last week and we were at Reset Connect, we're going to share some key insights from our brilliant panel sessions at the event. Spoiler alert, we loved it. So let's move into our introductions.
Yeah, for those of you that we've not met before, Elly and I are the co-founders of ESG Accord and the Accord Initiative website.
But who are we? I think that we need to go into some detail.
That's a bit existential.
Yeah, I think we need to go into some detail first. So, Lee, I'm going to put you first for this. And I think that we've got to not forget to share what personally motivates us in all of this. I mean, let's talk about, I guess, our passions for keeping going with sustainability and driving change. So off you go.
Thanks, Elly. I think obviously you're picking age before beauty there. So just a link to the age theme. I was an IFA for over 30 years, been in financial services now for 40 years. And I suppose over the last 35 years, my career has been sort of split between three businesses, all of which come right back to building up to how ESG Accord works. So, like I said, 31 years as an IFA specialising in ethical investment. And part of the firm's philosophy of supporting client values during the years when advisors were paid by that nasty old commission, we gave up to 50% of our net profits to good causes selected by clients. That was a great client engagement thing because we asked the clients, who do you think we should give our money to? So they love that. Everybody likes giving someone else's money away. So I've got real world experience of being a financial advisor and having to deal with the idiosyncrasies of clients and regulators. And over those 31 years, the level of regulation just seems to ratchet up year on year. Same time as running the IFA business, I started ethical data research business, which looked at the holdings in the underlying funds that we were recommending to clients. This was moved to a separate business and now supports IFAs with fund research for ethical, sustainable and ESG. And finally, because I can't say no even to myself, when I have an idea, I launched Australia's first animal-friendly superannuation fund and ran that for 8 years alongside the other two businesses. So, who needs sleep when you're young? So my steam was fully empty, completely ran out of it and needed a recharge. So I retired from the IFA business, as you well know, Elly, back in 2020, and that lasted a month. But what all the businesses gave me is real world practical knowledge of what it's like to be an IFA and the ability to understand the good and bad aspects of ESG, sustainable and ethical data. And also what it's like to set up and run as a financial services product provider. What motivates me? I think it's fairly simple, really. I love the idea of being part of positive change in an industry I have so much passion for, as well as supporting my long-standing dislike of bullies. Yep, bullies. That's what motivates me. And in this case, obviously ethical investment, responsible sustainability and that stuff. It's corporate bullying. It's where businesses will just consider it business as usual for hurting people, animals, and the planet to make a tiny bit of extra profit. Maybe doesn't always mean that you get extra profit, but just the thought that you might get an extra profit. And to me, that's corporate bullying. They get away with it because they can. Whilst everybody has their free choice, I just think there needs to be a lot more transparency about what actually happens in the investment industry, where money goes, and then let people decide what they want. If they don't care, that's fine. Anyway, that's me.
I don't think that is. I think there's a little bit more. I think that you need to tell everybody about your OBE as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got an OBE. Woohoo! I forgot that one. Yeah. So that was, when was that? 2011. and that was for services to ethical business and finance. Obviously, I was honoured to be awarded the OBE, and it was a brilliant day out at Windsor Castle. And I even met in the queue to get my OBE pinned on. I met some of the England cricket team and some comedy heroes. So it's a brilliant day.
Thank you.
And Elly, what about you? Come on then.
Okay. So my goodness.
Everyone wants to know.
I started in financial services also many years ago, back in the early 2000s as a paraplanner. Following a couple of years, I moved to L&G as a telephone-based pensions and investment BDM. I loved that role. I then had a stint as a sales manager, still with Legal & General, before heading out to travel around the world for a year. When I came back as a wealth development manager for L&G again in the city. They did have me back, and I looked after the national accounts, which I loved. But then I decided to leave the UK again. And this time it was for a solo trip to be a dive master for 3 months in French Polynesia. So when I came back from that one, I started my own company so that I could do Section 166 contract work. And then I had my 2 children. And then I focused on my kids solely for a few years before starting my own company again, so that I could do defined benefit transfer work and other file reviews as well. But I like the defined benefit work the most. Following this, we started ESG Accord, and that's about 5 years ago, I think now. So, yes. So I love the, as you know, the technical compliance side of the work that we do. That's, I think, the intersection of SDR and consumer duty. But yeah, okay, in terms of my personal motivations, aside from the fact that I do find sustainability and regulation super interesting, is that I also really love the sea, being in it, around it, seeing it every day. That's really important to me. So I currently live in the far southwest of Cornwall. I've been surfing for the last year or so. And so the diving that I've done over the years has meant that I've been immersed in pristine, thriving corals. And I've spent time in some of the most biodiverse places on the planet. And the reality, I suppose, of a changing world and a world wondering what it will be like for my children when they're older is both heartbreaking to me and also a huge call to action. So for me now, it's all about using my strengths, technical compliance and making change and horizon scanning. I need to feel like I'm doing everything I can now, right now. So yeah, big stuff.
Yeah, that is big stuff. Yeah. And I think my significant takeaway from what you've just said is the reference to BDM. Those of us of a certain age were called inspectors. In my days as a French prov inspector, now you've got fancy BDM titles. Anyway, nothing wrong with an inspector. Right, okay. So it's fair to say that we're both really passionate about bridging the gap between what clients care about and how the advice sector operates. And that's what this podcast is all about, really, going beyond the theory and into the how everything works for advisors on a day-to-day basis. And that's based on Elly's technical compliance and my time in the, how do we put this, IFA trenches, as it were,
Sure.
coming under fire from the regulator, as well as having to sit there and sip tea with a client.
Brilliant.
Absolutely loved and miss it.
So shall we talk about ESG Accord next?
Why not?
We've gone into, I know. ESG Accord, as Lee said at the beginning, is just Lee and I. So we are a specialist technical compliance firm. And like I said a moment ago, we started about 5 years ago. And that was with the aim to help the financial sector navigate sustainability and regulations via a free to access compliance toolkit for the advice process. So we deliver this toolkit via the Accord Initiative website. And it's fair to say that we've put a lot of work into the Accord Initiative over the last few years.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we work with distributors and manufacturers.
Yeah.
Fancy regulatory speak there. So which is basically advisors and platforms, networks on the distributor side, and obviously the manufacturers are the product providers and fund managers. So, and DFMs, yes, we'll even put DFMs, we'll even speak to DFMs, lovely, lovely, lovely DFMs and their NPSs. So we'll basically talk about sustainability and values and compliance to the whole industry. And we provide that via, as I said, the Accord Initiative website, consultancy, education, and practical support that we hope makes the regulatory landscape easier to manage and more meaningful for clients.
Yeah, I think that's key. It's the meaningful for clients part. So yeah, our day-to-day work, with it being just two of us, is obviously quite varied. So what do we do day to day? It will be running the Accord initiative, and that's the toolkit, keeping it up to date, seeing if we need to make changes, looking at regulatory things coming in. We support advice firms through regulation, like the Consumer Duty and SDR. We're advising DFMs and fund groups on sustainability, SDR integration and disclosures. We're also developing LIBF accredited sustainability related courses as well. So those are free to access on the site. So that's yes, yes, of course they are. Yeah. And something that is a real exciting piece of our work for me is our engagement work with the FCA. We're also part of a number of working groups, such as the PFS Sustainability Group.
Yeah, I sit on the FCA's Advisor Sustainability Group, known as the ASG, and that group hopes to be producing its main report for the advisor community in the autumn. So look out for that one. We'll probably do a whole episode unpicking that one for advisors.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of content. ESG Accord is also on the FCA's Disclosures Labels Advisory Group. And we're also on the APCC. We're members of the APCC, and Lee, you chair that group, don't you?
Yeah, yep. So we meet 3 times a year to discuss the compliance aspects of sustainability. So a large group of compliance people on teams.
Yes.
I'm just going to leave it there, leave it hanging, that one. Let people have their own mental picture. And so everything we do with one goal in mind. We do for you. No, sorry, I couldn't resist it. To help advisors give clear, compliant and compliant-led, clients-led advice on sustainability.
Sure. Yes, big stuff again. So what to expect from the podcast? Okay, so each episode we're going to tackle a wide range of topics from the world of advice and sustainability. Sometimes we're planning on guests, sometimes it will be just us. But I think what we're always going to focus on is what's useful and what's changing.
Yeah, so we have given some thought to this. This is not that random. So on our list of things to do, we'll be digging into the latest findings from the FCA's Financial Life Survey and what the findings mean for advisors and the wider industry.
Yeah, super important.
Yeah, that one is that's actually really interesting. And then we'll be talking about compliance dilemmas and compliance gaps and opportunities. And in my 30-odd years as an IFA, I've had to interpret quite a bit of regulation and try to make them practical and workable in the advice process. And then looking at things like how to have good sustainability conversations with clients and just sharing general good practice from across the industry.
Yeah, I'm really excited about these podcasts. And I think it's fair to say, after all the talking that we've been doing over the years, I think it's quite a natural progression for us to bring it into a podcast. So yeah, let's get straight into today's topic. So as I mentioned in the intro, last week was London Climate Action Week. And so we literally trekked over to the exhibition centre, the Excel exhibition centre in London for Reset Connect. So for those of our listeners who have not been to Reset Connect before, it's a very large event for sustainability and net zero business. And it's worth mentioning, it's only a part of the brilliant events run for Climate Action Week. It's an amazing week where many people are mobilized for action in this space. So it's great to be part of this. So as well as having a stand at the event, which we shared with our great friends at FundSense and GreenGage to showcase our joint work, Lee and I hosted 4 panel sessions over the 2 days with a massive 16 brilliant speakers who shared firsthand experiences of the real world journey that's SDR. We talked about due diligence for ESG, sustainable fund picking, drilled into details of communicating sustainability with clients, as well as rounding out advice to include philanthropy discussions. It's big, important work. So we feel really lucky to have been part of this, an amazing buzz around the fund manager and wealth manager stages. So needless to say, as you know, Lee, I did a lot of note taking.
You certainly did.
Yeah.
Well, I just stood there and compared the whole
Yes.
thing.
A brilliant job. It was an excellent event. Yeah.
Tiring, but great fun.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been to Reset Connect, add it to your list for 2026. Yeah. And it's the couple of days before Glastonbury starts, generally. So make a whole week of it. Do Reset Connect and disappear to Somerset. So from the event, we're sharing some photos and a key insights document via LinkedIn and on the Accord Initiative website. So head over and take a look. And we've added some links in the show notes. So I think that what we should do for this episode of Accord Talks is share our thoughts and key takeaways, one panel at a time.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start on day one. So it's a 2-day event. So on day one, we had 2 sessions. On the Wealth and Investment Manager Hub, we covered fund selection and SDR implementation. So Lee, do you want to share us your highlights?
I'll share it with you and anyone else that wants to listen.
Yeah.
I thought some of the comments about overseas funds and passives were really interesting.
Yeah.
So much focus on labels at the moment, which personally I think is a bit of a red herring from an advisor's perspective. I mean, labels are interesting, but they're not the main issue.
No.
And our panelists highlighted that overseas sustainable funds have a great deal to offer, significantly increase the number of funds to choose from when building a portfolio. And many offer sustainable investment solutions on a par with labels. So the key there is don't get hung up on labels. Look at sustainability and looking at how a sustainable solution fits with client needs. And then there are lots of comments around passives as well. Perhaps a little less positive on passives. Get my P's done there. And mainly because so far passives have really struggled under SDR. At the moment, there are no passives with a label, and I can understand how the disclosure requirements cause tensions within a firm because of the nature of passives. Active managers pick stocks for their funds, so they have all the information to hand about why they've chosen each company. Obviously, for a passive fund, the reporting needs to be built around every stock in the index. And as we know, passives don't normally need to undertake a great deal of research because, well, they're passive. And SDR requires transparency, so passives need to develop a reporting mechanism, not only on why they are linked to a specific index, but how the underlying stocks in the index are delivering sustainability. So it was interesting, the panel obviously looking at passives, looking at their sustainability, looking at their cost, wanting to build them into portfolios, multi-asset, multi-fund and MPS, but just struggling really to find some. But it's still fairly early days.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So what I loved about this panel was I think it was their agreement about the importance of building trust with clients. There was a real focus on consumer duty and where sustainability and charitable giving both slot in across the spectrum of capital. So they really got this point across. There was a lot of agreement on the importance of transparency and taking a realistic approach in their strategies. And of course, I'm going to big up our speakers for this. The technical detail, they really are experts. So it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, after that first panel, we then moved across to the next stage, which was on the fund and asset manager hub, to do our second panel, which was adapting to SDR, labels versus characteristics. And you covered quite a bit of that just in your highlights from the last subject, how the characteristics and the non-label products are so important as well. So yeah.
Well, they are. I mean, obviously, the first session was from predominantly DFM, so they were
Yes.
looking at on the buy side, looking
Yeah.
to pick up funds and what they needed to get from the funds, and then this second panel were the fund managers who were issuing the product or running the funds. So I thought it was interesting to hear from the fund managers who had a really good look and a hard look at their existing propositions and asked themselves whether their funds were indeed sustainable ESG or whether they fitted SDR at all. And I thought it was really interesting to hear one of the managers confirm that this process led them to decide that one of their funds would definitely have a label, another offering would use sustainability characteristics option,
Yeah.
and another, which was in the process of winding down anyway, but still, subject to SDR because it was still live, but winding down. Um, and they had to go through a whole process of examining what the marketing material looked like, even though they weren't marketing the fund, the fact that it still existed and contained references to sustainability. So that was a really good example of a fund manager, if you like, compartmentalizing. Where does SDR work? It's not a binary thing. And for that particular fund manager, it works really well on that fund from a label perspective. It works well on this fund from a non-labeled sustainability characteristics. And then we manage the wind down faster on the fund that we don't want in SDR. So that was a really good insight of how much work and time went into implementing SDR.
Yeah, I think again the panel worked really great as a group together. They
Mm.
were talking about some really quite big subjects like internal strategy, and the difficulty of the one size fits all approach, which I think is a common, perhaps a fear of the SDR. I think that the balance of labels, being great for client expectations and then the education needed for advisors and clients alike really stood out on this panel. Yeah, the need for education is big. And I think I suppose for me it makes me think about our work and what we have to do. And that's what the Accord Initiative is about after all. And what these podcasts are about. So that's great.
Yep.
So, moving to the second day, we did the
There
same.
was a very nice pizza in between, I would say.
Well, there was a
We
nice
did
pizza in
a great
between, yes.
pizza on the evening. And then we were ready to go, day two.
And of course, we did see the FCA. We saw Sasha Sedan speak in the
Oh, yeah.
afternoon on the KPMG panel, which was excellent as well. So yeah, on the second day, back to the Wealth and Investment Manager Hub, we covered fund selection and the SDR in practice again, but with some different speakers. So yeah, Lee, do you want to share your highlights from this one?
Yeah. I think the gloves were off on this one. So
Yeah.
people had come with a passion and a message, especially when it came to comments about advisors and sustainability. I mean, that sounds negative. There's negativity, but shrouded, surrounded by positivity. So there was one reference to advisors being indifferent to sustainability. And then, yeah, there was another reference to some advisors, the fund manager felt that some advisors were imposing their views about ESG or sustainability on clients.
Mm.
And what I found really interesting about those comments, but also a little worrying, um, is that if you look at the those references to advisor indifference or imposing views, to me these are serious consumer duty issues.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I know today we're looking at sustainability, but I couldn't help bringing up consumer duty because everything does lead back.
Yes.
Sustainability SDR sits within consumer duty. Now, obviously, Ellie, we're going to have to dig a lot deeper into why these comments are a consumer duty problem, and that's going to have to be for a future podcast. It
Yeah.
might even have to run for more than one podcast. Such an issue it is, because once we go down that rabbit hole, no idea where it ends up.
Yeah. So yeah, my highlights on this one, it was a great mix of speakers, and my favourite bit, was that everyone on the panel agreed that labels are not enough. We need
Mhm.
the disclosures, we need stewardship, qualitative judgment. All of this remains essential. So it was great to hear about the processes, and I particularly loved hearing more about due diligence from the panelists. So yeah, it was great. So then, like with day one, on day two, we also moved across to the fund and asset manager hub to cover adapting to SDR labels versus characteristics again. So yeah, Lee, do you want to share?
Yep. Um, so again, we're back with fund managers now, and
Yeah.
I just there must have been something in the air, the vibe for day two, because people were definitely out to make a point, which is fine. I mean, that's a public debating platform we had. We had lots of good audience participation. So my main takeaway from this second session sort of goes back to my 30 years as an IFA, really, specializing in ethical investment. There are quite a few references from our panelists about how ethical funds still have a place and that demand is growing, still growing for ethical funds, but ethical doesn't fit very well into SDR. And that was referred to on the panel. And of course, this impacts advisors in two ways. The first, to make sure that in any discussions they have with clients around sustainability, is not to get locked into a simple process of, oh, okay, so that means you want one of the labels. Here are the labels. Pick one, please. Um, there are so many more options available. We've already referred to that. And secondly, that a client who wants to invest sustainably, advisors having a conversation, they're talking about sustainability, the client's expressing an interest in investing sustainably. Um, a lot of those clients will still say, yeah, but you wouldn't invest my money in, well, I don't know, tobacco, child labor, animal exploitation, would you? So they may not use the right language, but essentially what they're saying is, I want the money to be invested sustainably, but I want it passed through a filter. Ethical funds are still there. They can provide that baseline filter. The fund won't go and invest in X. I mean, old style ethical funds used to be, here's a list of all things we won't do, and then anything else goes. I think there's a lot of really good quality ethical funds out there now that say we've got an underpin of screens. These are the areas we won't go, and then the rest of the strategy is fully sustainable. So, yep. So again, there were references to some of the conversations led back to consumer duty, a bit like Roman roads. They all lead back to consumer duty. They don't go to Rome anymore. They take they turn left and went out to the FCA in Stratford. So all roads lead to consumer duty. And what they pointed out really from the panel was if you're not having a conversation with clients about their values, there's nothing to record on file. And
Yeah.
that means you've got no way of demonstrating that the advice you've offered is suitable because it leaves the door open to a claims management company, FOS or whatever, a complaint in the future to say, yes, but if you had asked me X, I would have said Y, and that would have led to a different scenario. So it's about record keeping. But anyway, we're going to do that on one,
Yep.
two, three, four, or five more podcasts in the future. Um, but yeah, so Elly,
Yeah,
your take.
yeah, I think obviously agree with all of your comments there. And yeah, for me, it's just brilliant. The expertise and experience of the panelists was really great. And like you said at the beginning, there it was. I wrote down in my notes, it was like a get down into the nitty gritty feel about it. We really went into the detail with the panelists covering everything from rigid KPIs, what the FCA kicked back on throughout the labels process experience, and how the managers have dealt with things. And I loved as well how positive that we ended things with the agreement from the panel for transparency and the availability now of the disclosures being there. alongside, I think this was great, alongside storytelling. So there has to be the great story, and this is what advisors can be using with their clients, and it's what creates that buy-in. So it's so important that labels don't fit all funds, especially the values-based funds, but they need to suit many different client preferences. And yeah, that's very real and very evident and very Consumer Duty. So yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you picked up on that storytelling thing, because
Yes.
back in my IFA days, you can talk to clients about alpha and beta and then, slap them around and wake them up. No, of course you wouldn't. But, clients will nod off if you start talking about pound cost averaging and alpha and beta. You start telling them about the companies that their money is going to be invested in and the positive stories there. Fund managers want to tell those stories. Advisors should, want to hear those stories and pass them on to clients. That's what makes the financial advice process so much more personal. Instead of it being about your client sitting there thinking, I bet you've described alpha, beta and pound cost averaging to hundreds of clients, but now you've moved off to what's interest to me. This is my advice. You're giving this advice to me, aren't you? And that feels so much more personal than just, you're going to go into a range of UK equity and global funds. So storytelling is absolutely brilliant. And IFAs are fantastic storytellers. And sustainability gives them fantastic stories. What's not to love?
And if you want to, so if our listeners want to find out a little bit more about who the speakers were and what they said, a little summary, that's on our key insights document that Lee mentioned, is on the show notes and on the site and on LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
So you'll get a blow by blow summary of the areas that each of the speakers covered. I reckon that wraps it up now, Elly.
Yeah.
For our first one. Run out of steam and run out of water.
Yeah.
So, massive thank you to all the speakers on our panels at Reset Connect, and to our, all our friends in the industry, and that came to see us at the event, came to see us on the stand. Fantastic.
Certainly made it a busy couple of days, didn't it?
Was a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to start our first episode and end it on such positivity. So yeah.
So let's have a look at this. So you now know who we are, what the Accord Talks is all about, and just to summarise, we're here to help you cut through the noise and the jargon. Oh, wait a minute. There's lots of jargon in sustainability, and my goodness me, it's so easy to fall into it. So hopefully we'll take a good slice through the jargon, make it really simple, because ultimately you can't, as advisors, take that jargon and just regurgitate it for clients. There has to be a watering down process just to make it understandable for clients. So I hope you've enjoyed our little conversation. I think I can say for myself, and Elly's nodding, so we enjoyed it too, which is brilliant.
Yeah. We certainly did. So don't forget to subscribe to Accord Talks on Spotify and various other channels. And if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover, please do drop us a message. That can be via the website or LinkedIn or via our emails. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us for this first episode of Accord Talks. We've loved it. We hope you have too.